All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. We are going to start out with 2 videos, but first I'd like to thank the Greater Susquehanna Valley United Way for putting this on, as well as Evangelical Community Hospital, United in Recovery. We both had displays out in the hallway, the Hiding in Plain Sight, as well as some of our e-cigarette, juuling, and vaping products out there. So if you didn't get a chance to see them, stop out there later this after the presentation. But we're going to first start out with videos and then have the panelists come up to the front, to the stage. The first video is from ABC Nightline, and it talks about the long-term effects of juuling and vaping. And then we are going to see one from the Today Show, Juuls, Hidden in Plain Sight. And tell a little bit about what their role is in their career, what they're doing that relates to juuling and vaping. So we have Peter Cheddar, the Mount Carmel Junior High School principal, Leanne Ryan, the Mount Carmel school nurse, Perry Meadows, he is the medical director of government programs for Geisinger Health Plan, Jennifer Campbell, who is a registered dental hygienist with Dr. William Rumberger in Sunbury, Carrie Davis, who is a program specialist with Northumberland County Drug and Alcohol, and Ann DeWanzik, wellness educator with Evangelical Community Hospital. Thank you, panelists. So we'll start with Mr. Cheddar there. He can introduce himself and tell him his role.
My name is Pete Cheddar. I'm the junior high principal at Mount Carmel area.
Leanne Ryan, school nurse.
Perry Meadows, medical director, government programs at Geisinger Health Plan.
Jennifer Campbell, registered dental hygienist in Sunbury, Pennsylvania for 20 years.
Carrie Davis, the prevention program specialist in Northumberland County Drug and Alcohol.
Ann DeWanzik, educator for Evangelical Community Hospital.
All right, thank you. So we're going to open this up to questions, but I think what I will do first is I will just kind of start off the conversation a little bit more with the Mount Carmel School District folks. So what is it you're seeing in the school? What are some obstacles, issues that you're dealing with on a regular basis?
I think the video did an excellent job of describing how difficult it is for our administration and our teaching staff. I think when a lot of us could think of when we were in school that a lot of obviously the tobacco use would be notorious, be used in the bathrooms. That's just not the case. It does happen in our restrooms, but again, our administration, it's making lives very difficult for us because of a lot of the things that you just saw in the video. A lot of the students, fortunately for us, have been caught because of our metal detector, because of our policy of screening our students coming in the morning. I would say a majority, almost 80 to 90% of the incidents that we've dealt with in relation to e-cigarettes and juuling have been as a result of our metal detector and our policies for entry in the morning.
Are you seeing kids coming into your office and having issues, more noticeable coughing, asthma, anything that you've seen just from your standpoint?
Sure, the problem with juuling is that a lot of the symptoms are almost like they have a cold. You know, they could be complaining of, I have a cough, my asthma's been, it's the weather, I'm having problems breathing. But after prolonged use, a lot of the symptoms are almost flu-like related. So they could have a fever, they could have the chills. So it's really hard as a healthcare provider to know the difference between, is it juul related, is it truly the flu? Because I can ask them, do you smoke? No. Do you smoke cigarettes? No. Do you juul? Oh, yes. because they honestly think it's harmless. They think that it's just a water vapor and that it'll be okay that they're doing it.
Thank you. So Dr. Meadows and Jennifer, so from more of the medical standpoint and what you're seeing, Jennifer, in the dental hygienist chair, what's happening there?
For us, we see it clinically first, and normally with our profession, we will probably see it more because they tend to bring themselves in as teenagers who can drive, or their parents will drop them off as being younger students who are starting it clinically in the mouth. It presents sort of the same symptoms, but it doesn't have the odor that is easily detectable, so you have to be aware. You also end up with different things with them being in braces and the decay happening. It can happen instantly because it's sugar that is in the flavoring along with the sticky substance that attaches to any of the hardware for the braces, any teeth, anything like that. So a child who, I say child because a lot of them are younger, come in who have started it may have no decay at first. Then 6 months later, they'll show up, end up with 5 cavities. It's all because the cleaning off of the substances that are so sticky is not the same. They have a tough enough time cleaning their teeth, so as it is. So a lot of what we will see is a couple cavities. They'll come in with a clean bill of health, and then of course, mom and dad are saying, they were just here 6 months ago. I don't understand. Why all the cavities? A lot of it has to do with this. A lot of it has to do with their braces. And the other part is it's hard to remove, especially when they're not able to brush during the day and stuff. Parents tend to get a little mad. They're sinking thousands of dollars into kids' teeth, and this is what may end up happening with their teeth, the decay, the braces, all that kind of stuff going on. So we really have to be aware. We started watching for this probably, I think my first continuing ed was in 2010. So.
Do you have anything to add, Perry?
Where to start, Sheila?
I know. I know. We could go on all night.
Yeah, actually, I could. But no, a lot of what we're seeing relates to the addiction issue. I mean, if you think about opiates, what do opiates do? They stimulate the pleasure centers in the brain. The opiate binds the receptor, you get a release of dopamine, dopamine travels down, pleasure centers are stimulated. It's the same centers that are stimulated with food and sex. Nicotine attaches to the same receptors and causes the same dopamine release. So we're talking about a similar process for addiction between nicotine and opiates. One of the other things to think about is that, certainly agree with the cold, flu symptoms. It's commonly what we see, but we don't really know what the long-term effects are. How long did it take before we knew what the long-term effects of cigarette smoking were? We really don't know what's actually in these things. I mean, we know there's oils, we know there's benzoic acid, glutaraldehyde, we know that there's lithium from the batteries that's vaporized that goes into the lungs, but we really don't know long-term what the effects of juuling are going to be.
Scary stuff. So from the program side of it, I know, Carrie, you come into the schools and do some stuff with Too Good for Drugs, but I know that you also dabble a little bit in the juuling and the vaping world too as well, and Ann does some stuff with the schools too. So in short, what are some of the things that you've come in contact with? Or
We come into contact. First off, I sit in on all the student assistance programs in all of the school districts in Northumberland County, and that's a big issue. The schools are very in tune to what's going on. We've done what we can do to provide them education, information, so that the teachers, faculty, and staff are more in tune and understand more about what's going on. The problem is, as Perry said, you're dealing with nicotine, which is a very powerful stimulant drug, and it is very addicting. We're getting kids between 10 and 12 who are addicted to nicotine. And I laughed at the video, and I'm sorry I did, because Leanne was laughing when I snickered. When the girl said, "I smoke almost a pod a day." I was just dealing with some children recently, and one of them said, "I go through 4 to 6 pods a day, easily, depending on where I can get a hold of it and where I can get the money for it."
And the pods are equal to a pack of cigarettes.
Well, anywhere from a pack to 4 packs of cigarettes, depending on what type of tobacco products you
Yeah.
smoke. So it could be the equivalent of 4 packs of cigarettes, actually. So it's very difficult. We're trying to do what we can do, because we now have kids who are not only addicted to nicotine, but one of the other problems we have, and we're seeing more and more of it coming in now, is these kids can go online and mail order jewel pods filled with THC,
Right.
marijuana, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana.
Yep.
And not only are they becoming addicted to the nicotine, but they're also becoming addicted to the THC.
Yep. So Ann, what are you seeing when you go to the schools, and what are the kids kind of revealing to you, or what are you?
Sure. What we do is, in my department, is we go and do educational programs for kindergarten through 12th grade. So I come in as an outsider, and I have some displays that I can show them, and kids will see it. We've had youngest kindergartner tell us exactly how a Juul works. We've been at a school where a teacher wasn't sure, but he's pretty sure he saw a 3rd grader with one of the Enjoys. The kids don't know what they have, so we bring them in and show them and talk to them about them. And sometimes we hear, well, kindergarten is so young, you're influencing them. No, we're educating them. We need to plant the seed early how dangerous these products are, so as they start to grow up, they realize that these are dangerous, that when someone offers it to you or you're around it, you have a good education and a good background to make the right choices for you. So, and the kids will ask us questions about things they see at home, because a lot of times they see parents using them and they assume mom and dad use them, that they're safe to use. So they'll ask questions about moms and dads using these products too.
So we saw in the video, they said they do not market to kids. But I don't know the last time a parent really wanted Tutti Frutti or, Captain Crunch flavoring. So I guess my question is, why are we all of a sudden now hearing about this? I think, Jen, you said that you started hearing about this back in 2010. So why now has the media taken interest? Why are we, what is it that's causing this to be such a hot topic in the last probably 2 years?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the CDC, Doctor.
I was going to say.
I think that one's one for you, because the CDC just.
Dr. Meadows?
Yes, CDC just came out with some interesting information on that. But it has been around for years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just in the last couple of years that we've really seen it explode in the youth and adolescent.
And do you think it has to do with that addiction piece of it, that it is so highly addictive, and the kids are just using it more often than, waiting till the end of school to get that cigarette in? Now they can, what that one boy said, 40 times in an hour, he hit his Juul. So it's
Sheila, it's interesting. I've never seen a case of nicotine toxicity in someone that smokes cigarettes. It's hard to smoke enough cigarettes to inhale enough nicotine to start seizing.
Oh.
With the Juul or with these cigarettes, it's very easy to get in enough nicotine to seize, shut your kidneys down, or even die.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to add, when you said they don't market the product, and the CEO of Juul said, no, we don't. They immediately went to social media when they started marketing their product.
Oh, I was being facetious, just so you know.
I
was not being serious.
I understand that.
I was
But the other
saying that in jest, so.
The other point that I wanted to make, specifically about Juul, which has about 75% of the market. Number one, once they became very popular, Altria bought a significant percentage of the company. Altria is Philip Morris. the maker of Marlboro. So you know where it's going. The cigarette companies have found the new frontier. But the other problem with Juul that I've just found horrific, and I unfortunately preach about it all the time, is Juul had brilliant chemists when they designed their product. Most vaping products are based on freebase nicotine, which is more difficult to get into the body. It's harsher. That's why you see a lot of people using regular vaping devices that are coughing and hacking and have sore throats and things. Juul developed an administration system using nicotine salt-based isomers, which is smoother, it's less harsh, and it also provides nicotine at a much higher percentage into the bloodstream than any other products. And unfortunately, right now, the new kids product is called Enjoy. Mm-hmm. And you want to guess which technology Enjoy used for administration of nicotine?
Probably the same.
The salt-based isomers of Juul.
Yep.
They are deliberately designing them
Sure.
to get kids addicted and get them quickly.
Sure.
I mean, fruit punch, creme brulee,
Yep.
which happens to be the most popular Juul
Yep.
flavor, mint, cool cucumber, and I'm missing one. There are
That's all
four of them, but it's
Get the
just,
idea. Yeah.
fruit punch. They're all designed for the kids.
So one more question for the administrator. So you had mentioned that a lot of your detectors stop at the door. So if they do get through and they are able to get it into the school, what are some of the punishments, or what have you done if you have found them, even if you have caught them at the door? What are some of the things you guys are doing to help fight this?
Well, the first thing, our administration, last summer, we added to our school board policy, which is policy 222, our tobacco policy, to add a definition for nicotine products that would include devices such as vape cartridges, pods, or associated products with vaping or juuling. If it falls under our tobacco policy, again, policy 222, it has been historically a 3-day suspension. Again, we talked earlier about how it makes it a little bit difficult. Kids are bringing in parts of the vape. One person or one student might have the actual vape, and another kids will be coming in with just the pods, and then they share them. Again, we're very concerned, and we tell our kids all the time, it's obviously not safe if you're watching or walking into your local Turkey Hill and buying a vape. It's really tremendously scary for us if you're just getting that vape from a student and you have no idea what is actually in it. There's another level of concern for us. But again, to us, it's pretty cut and dry, and our tobacco policy would include a 3-day suspension.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to the audience. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for any of the panelists up here?
What's happening with governments throughout the different states and local districts trying to control it? What's happening? What's happening with the different states and different local governments and schools? What are they doing to control it? I mean, many states have passed laws, or schools have school districts or whatever. It's here and there, right? I mean, it's not, trying to control it. Local authorities, yeah.
Like Mount Carmel,
Yes.
I think every school district in Northumberland County has amended their tobacco policies to include vaping device-related products as part of their smoking and tobacco policies. So they're trying to enforce it that way. But as we were talking before the panel, most of the schools, even middle schools, are confiscating probably at least 5 devices a day from the various. Now, again, as Mr. Cheddar so clearly pointed out, the kids are getting a little smarter. They're dividing up pieces of the product, they're stashing them in things, so that even if you go through the metal detectors, the metal detector may go off, but they have other pieces of metal that get searched, and it's like, oh, this is what set the device off. And then they get a piece of the product in and they share them. You can always tell when you go into a restroom if they're using any of the flavor products. It smells like cotton candy or fruit punch after they've been in vaping. But there are vape products that have absolutely no detectable odor. So there are significant problems.
Anything from the medical community, Perry, that you're aware of is what they're trying to do to combat or fight laws or anything?
Just about all the societies, Academy of Family Physicians, Academy of Pediatrics, they've all put out bulletins discussing how to detect, what to look for. The FDA's put out their warning, CDC's put out a warning, but from a legislative standpoint in Pennsylvania and most other states, there's not a whole lot of movement.
Thank you. Any other questions? I thought I saw a hand in the very back.
We understand that it is bad, and nicotine is a terrible drug, and in its form, it causes a lot of problems. But I know you did mention THC, but I guess my question is, has this proven to be a real gateway type of situation that is leading to more severe situations of people getting into harsher drugs?
Sure, I can answer that question very easily. Some of the vape products that are being illicitly made, I know a couple of the deaths involved what's called K2 or spice, that they actually used the synthetic, quote-unquote, marijuana in the vaping devices, and they feel that maybe that product was related to the death of an individual. They can put crystal meth in them. They can put all sorts of drugs in a vape to vaporize it and inhale it. Any addiction can lead to further addiction with multiple drugs. Like I said, the kids that I was talking to recently, every single one of them jeweled, and in addition to that, either smoked marijuana or jeweled marijuana in addition to that. And we have a lot of kids right now in the area that are experimenting with crystal meth. And not as much, but in an older segment, high school, post-high school, with opioids. And it's all a part of an addiction process. And the problem is, and most adults don't understand this, we're dealing with kids. And it is, a brother-in-law of mine always used to say, they have puppy brains. And the problem with the puppy brain is it isn't fully mature yet. And when you hit it with a drug, you are stunting the growth of that brain. And the problem is we have 24 and 25 and 26-year-olds who are addicted to drugs that have a brain of a 10 to 12-year-old. And the problem is dealing with that individual who's 25 or 26 as if they were 10 to 12. Because you can't deal with them because they don't have the same cognitive thought process presence of an adult because their brain's been stunted.
Dr. Meadows, you talked about that last time at our other presentation about how that addiction at such a young age and what it does to the brain and how it can affect them long term. And I think the young man even mentioned in the video how that happened to him, that they said his short-term memory was going to be affected, his lung capacities. So with addiction itself, talk a little bit about.
I mean, the brain continues to develop not only in adolescent and teen years, but it continues to develop through the 20s into the 30s. So it's a long-term process, and the use of not only nicotine but any substance is going to retard the development of brain cells and the neural pathways.
And we also have to remember that teens believe that they're invincible at this age. So what's happening to someone else that they saw on the 6 o'clock news most certainly won't happen to them or their friends. Before you go on, I just have a couple. I like statistics, and I belong to the National School Nurse Association. And as of just October the 8th, from the CDC, 49 states have reported 1,299 cases of vape use. 26 of those resulted in death. There's an increase in being hospitalized each week to the point that at this point, they're saying, is it the flu? Is it from vaping? A lot of cases are uncertain. 60% of Juuls were nicotine-based. However, 76% of some of the other Juuls were all based from THC that students are able to get, like you said, from eBay. That's really scary to know that our kids can be ordering stuff off of mail order and they're getting it. And as parents, we don't even know it.
Bud Man of Orange County.
Bud Man of Orange County, I was just going to say that.
$89.99 will get you a Juul
Yep.
pod with 1 gram of THC
There you
in
have
it.
it.
90+% pure.
Yep. And one more statistic. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, e-cigarette use has doubled since 2017, which you have seen. And 1 in 4 seniors have said that they've either been vaping or a part of a vape party. They see the flume of smoke and they inhale that, and they think that's okay. So,
It's awful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Any other questions?
Just one more thought. And
Sorry.
I grew up in the 70s, unfortunately. But, you know, it just seems like our young people are always being influenced. And it's just not hard drugs as we always think about, but it is things like nicotine. I grew up in the 70s, and, you know, technology then wasn't as great as it is today. But I remember the 70s, it was the Marlboro Man. And then back in the 80s and 90s, it was Camel Joe. And there was always something from the tobacco and nicotine trying to influence youth to use nicotine. And when I was playing football in the 70s and an athlete in college in the 80s, all of a sudden everybody started chewing tobacco. Skull, but it was terrible tasting. What did they come out with? Happy Days Raspberry. And it tasted like, just like raspberries. And all you had to put was a little pinch in your cheek and gum, and it was great. And you were cool. And you know, our good medical people on the stage could probably tell you, back in the 80s and 90s, all of a sudden, what has started happening to the inside of people's mouths and gums and tops of their mouths and throat cancer and things like that. And we don't have that problem because people aren't chewing as much as anymore. And I'm just wondering, again, what the long-term effects are. But again, here's Juul, and it's something that tobacco companies are pushing and doing. And what's next? You know, it's the Marlboro Man, Camel Joe, and now this. So we have to do our best to try to combat this as best as possible. But it's just not the schools. It's all of us and the public and everybody else. So thank you all for coming here tonight. That's what I just wanted to say.
One of the things I bring in part of my presentation is I bring in candy cigarettes, and I'll say to kids, what are these? And they're like, oh, they're candy cigarettes. And I'll be like, how many of you pretended like when you opened them you were smoking a cigarette? And I did it. My gosh, you got them at the store. Every kid's hand goes up. I did it. So even at a young age, candy cigarettes demonstrated how to smoke. Same thing with the chew, the beef jerky that comes in the can of chew. I'll ask them how many pretend like they put a dip in. They all say yes. So even at young ages through candy and things like that, we introduced this to them very young. So when all these products came out with candy, I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, we've been giving them candy cigarettes and candy all the time that, again, thought they were smoking. So I think as parents, we need to be very careful as to the message we send when we hand this stuff out.
well, many students believe that e-cigarettes are better than smoking or chewing. So, you know, that's really hard. And as a parent, my oldest son, I caught him with the Juul when he was home over the summer. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, what? We all do it. And then, of course, you know, you go into mom mode. He's 22. We've all done it. That's what he says. Well, we've all done it. But as a parent, you have to have a zero tolerance policy. And it's just like when we talk to them about drugs and alcohol, now we have to introduce something as water vapor that has nicotine in it and say, this is no too.
My question was, and maybe I missed this along the way, you were saying youngsters or young people are being hospitalized because of flu-like symptoms. Are they coming clean that they're using? Is there a blood test to know that they're using? Or do they go home with parents under the assumption that they have the flu-like symptoms.
That's me. In most cases, you don't know. There is a test for it, but you have to test specifically for it. Now, you don't test for nicotine. You test for a product called cotinine, which is a breakdown product of the nicotine, because the nicotine disappears out of the system so fast. But a healthcare provider has to recognize it and has to suspect it and has to test for it.
Boy, okay, that's what how many kids go home unbeknown to the parents that they're really using this and are, they think they just had the flu. That was my thoughts.
Yeah.
From a school nurse point of view, it's flu season. It's right around the corner. We've just had a terrible allergy season, and it keeps getting warm out, and then it's cold, so I have a lot of upper sinus, respiratory stuff that comes through, and of course I can't diagnose. I can listen to lungs, I can hear if they're raspy, if they need their inhalers. But a student to come clean, to say, yes, that's what I'm doing, that's very hard, and they really have to have a good rapport with you.
And some of the kids may be unaware that this is caused by the juuling.
Correct, but fortunately Anne was in our building a few weeks ago, and she did a phenomenal assembly on juuling, and we had from 6th grade to 12th here, and they really had an eye-opening visions of what it looks like. We showed them these videos, and as a matter of fact, we actually had a student that we caught with a Juul that morning of the assembly, and his punishment before he was able to go home, he had to sit and watch this. And I just think it's just, there's so many students that we don't know are doing it because they honestly think it's okay. But I think since that assembly, they've realized maybe not so much.
Also, I think a lot of kids won't dime themselves out unless they're in so much distress that they feel they don't have an option because they need that help. I'm sure these kids that were hospitalized and put on respirators and various other things realized, oh my God, what happened? So they'll acknowledge that. It depends how distressed kids are. One of my functions, which I no longer do, was to interview children who were in distress who had potential addictions. And my job was to assess the child to determine if it appeared that there was an addictive process going on, what that may be, what was going on, and what opportunities for help we could offer that child. Usually when kids are distressed and life is out of sync, they tend to be very honest, and they will tell you everything you need to know to get them the help they need. I mean, we're sending kids as young as 10 years old to inpatient treatment now because they've started the addictive process since age 8 and are physically addicted and out of control with various products. So it's kind of a scary world out there for them, and most of them, when they're distressed enough, they'll come clean and be honest with you because they want you to help them because they're in pain. Whether it's psychological or physical pain, they're in pain and they want help.
Does the school help with that, if you do have a situation where a kid is juuling and it kind of seems to be that addiction pathway? Is there anything in place with the school where you can refer them?
Part of their SAP process is the school's very in tune to this, I can tell you that, on a regular basis. We get referrals to my department all the time, directly.
Good.
We have a cooperative agreement with all of the school districts that all they have to do is get a parent to sign a consent, and we will actually come into the school privately where nobody knows what's going on and interview the child and assess them and then offer them the treatment opportunities they need. So the schools are very in tune to that.
Good. That's great. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Sheila, I have a question for the audience.
Okay.
I got a question for everybody. Whenever we go to the doctor, we're always asked if we smoke. Has anybody ever been asked if you use e-cigarettes?
the dental office?
You do at the dental office?
I ask my patients all the time.
That's awesome.
Especially the younger ones. 9 chances out of 10, half of the middle schoolers are using, about 3/4 of high schoolers are using, and as you go up to college, almost all of them have at least tried it. Slight percentage hasn't, but I interview my patients there. I ask them, how many of your friends have been using them? Do you guys see that? It's right on our health history form. Do you smoke? Do you use cigars? Do you use cigarettes? Do you use a pipe? Juuling or other e-cigarette type of mechanism. Tobacco use, and then I ask. 9 chances out of 10, though, if they're a kid, mom and dad are filling out the form for them. So you have to ask. I always talk to them about it and say, hey, we're seeing all this stuff going on. How many of your friends do? How many of your friends have been there? The unfortunate part is, I think that this juuling craze is hit because it was originally introduced to stop smoking. It was originally a product in order to step down from cigarettes, step down from tobacco use, but they noticed how much money was to be made. And just like anything else, money's the key.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is because I've never been asked.
No, I was just at the eye doctor, they didn't ask us that. They asked us if we smoked. But
They
yeah.
ask if you smoke. Do you smoke, do you drink? That's the question
Yep.
you're asked. And quite honestly, I see a lot of medical records in my current job, and I rarely, if ever, see any documentation related to e-cigarette use or juuling. That's both for adults and kids.
Anyone from the audience have any comment on that? Yes, sir.
I think that this is more harmful than smoking cigarettes. If we're more aware of it as parents, and everything, like for me and my wife, especially for me, this is really an eye-opening, for me, because if somebody showed me my teeth was gonna look like that after vaping and stuff like that, I want to have no parts of it. So, it's a start maybe to expose this to the kids that are, in the grade schools and stuff like that. Now, if you're vaping, now, could they swab your mouth and could they tell you that you're vaping?
I'm sure if they took cells. You mean for us in the office, or do you mean
No,
just
I mean,
in
like,
general?
In general,
I'm not aware of a home kit. There's a urine test and a blood test that can be done, but it's not instant results.
I do know in our profession that we are able to do swabs, like take a few cells and stuff like that and send it off for pre-cancer. That's about the only thing I can relate to that for.
Yeah, because if you swab your mouth if you're a smoker or something like that,
Right.
you could tell that right away. So I'm just,
And the tissue slough's real easy, so that's why they can get the samples real easy.
okay, well, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, a lot of employers actually do testing for urine cotinine now because it really affects the premiums for their health insurance.
Right, that would
And
change the premiums if you're
Non-
smoking or if you're vaping,
Non-smokers have much lower premiums with some employers.
Right.
And employers have been doing that for years. Some employers won't hire smokers.
Well, I don't know, to me, that don't sound right,
Well, this'll really depress you then. I spent 35 years in the criminal justice system. I was an adult probation officer and eventually a deputy chief on the adult side. A lot of employers aren't drug testing anymore because they can't get enough candidates to fill their positions because they're testing positive. So they've eliminated their drug testing programs, which is kind of a sad state of affairs.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I still communicate with a lot of people in Ohio where I did nothing but occupational medicine for 12 years, and Carrie's correct. A lot of employers don't do drug testing anymore because they can't get enough qualified candidates. Now, in Ohio, if you do drug testing on, pre-employment and random, you get a break on your workers' compensation premiums, but the break on the workers' compensation premium doesn't account for the lack of workforce that you have. So that's why a number of employers have stopped doing drug screens.
Any other questions from the audience? Any more comments from the panelists? All right. Thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it, and thank you for your time, panelists. I appreciate you coming out and talking and giving us some insight and some knowledge. Thank you.